It's always hard to follow up after Brandon leads that song. A bunch of our teens are actually out of town. They're at a conference in Indianapolis, so we're missing a chunk of about 30 people. So the teens, as well as their chaperones, are all not out of town. But I appreciate the spirit in the room today.
Yeah.
Also wanted to just quickly mention that we are asking for people to be praying and if possible, fasting for just the situation of the coronavirus worldwide. So just, thankfully it hasn't, I believe, affected the state of Michigan, or it hasn't been any reported cases, but it is becoming, in danger of becoming a pandemic, and obviously there's that fear of it affecting the conference that we have. If you're visiting, we're part of a worldwide fellowship, and so every 4 years we kind of gather together, which is really exciting. We've been planning for this conference for about 4 years. And it's going to be in Orlando, and there's a real danger of it being canceled, as well as the Olympics. I don't know if you know that too, but a lot of things are in danger. But let's have a quick prayer for that right now. God in heaven, we know that you are in complete control of everything. We know that you have the power to look at the things that are macro and the micro, whether it's a star or whether it is a little virus. And God, we pray that you would bless the leadership, the doctors, the people that are helping to solve this problem. Please be with the people that have the virus, that one, they can be healed, and then also but quarantined so that this won't spread. And we just lift this up to you, knowing that you're in control. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We have been talking about, or our series has been for the last 4 weeks on walk. And the hope of this would be that we could kind of frame Christianity as it was intended to be. Question whether we are walking with Jesus Christ, not a badge, not a title, not something that you wear, but really a question of how you're living. We spoke about walking with Jesus, making sure that we're walking in the same direction, that we're walking with others that are walking in the direction towards Christ. Illumide, another one of our ministers, spoke about walking away from wickedness. And of course, last week I spoke about walking towards the vision that God has for our lives. And really what I wanted us to take away was 2 things, is that you've got to fight for the perspective that you, to be spiritual, and that somebody that is gaining a godly vision embraces accountability. And accountability, we normally think of it as something where, I need accountability so I can avoid the bad. But accountability can also be seen as a reason, as a method to embrace what's good in our lives.
Right.
I want to talk today about walking with persistence. Walking with persistence.
Oh boy. Come on.
It's all for naught, I believe, if we walk with God, but then we end up giving up.
Right.
If you make decisions that I want to do this, that I want to make godly changes in my life, but that something happens and you decide to give up. We've all given up things in our lives. Obviously, all of us didn't continue the lessons that we started, whether it was piano or you took martial arts lessons as a kid. At some point, you had to discontinue something. But the one thing you don't want to discontinue is walking with God.
Yeah.
There's 3 main reasons I believe people stop walking with God. 3 reasons. One is fatigue. The other is the lack of clarity of convictions that we have. And the third reason is we get derailed.
Right.
I'm going to say that again, and we're going to go over these. But there's 3 reasons why I believe people stop walking with God. Fatigue, lack of clarity, and we get derailed. So, first one's fatigue. Fatigue's a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fatigue can make the most simple tasks seem enormous.
Yeah.
Or overwhelming, right? The simple task of lifting a book and holding it, which is, doable for anybody here, but if you do it long enough, it can feel unbearable.
Right.
Remember when I was 16 and I got my license, I literally volunteered to drive anywhere and everywhere. It didn't matter how long. I was like, you need an errand done, Dad? Let me drive. Let me do it. And now, after having driven for a couple decades, I have this drive I do in the mornings where I drop my kids off at the bus stop. It's less than half a mile. Like, it's just like, if it's sunny, they walk it, you know what I mean? But, it's really cold out, and so I just drop them off and stay in that car. It's less than half a mile, and then my wife and I have actually gotten bumps as to who's going to do it. We've actually argued about this. It's like, oh, it's my turn to do this half-mile drive, is it? I actually get upset about it. And but why is that? Because we get fatigued, right? Vince Lombardi said, famous football coach of the Green Bay Packers, he said, fatigue makes cowards of us all. It's hard to have zeal and ambition for God when you're tired.
Right.
And there are really two kinds of fatigue, okay? There are two kinds of fatigue. There's physical fatigue, and there's spiritual fatigue.
Yeah.
Now, physical fatigue, that's very real.
Yeah.
And I think we know the prescription, or hopefully you know the prescription for physical fatigue is that you need to get some rest and take a break.
Yeah.
There was a prophet in the Bible. In the Old Testament, there's a lot of sort of historical accounts. In the book of 1 Kings, there's a prophet named Elijah. And after doing all the things, God put this guy on a journey. He had to live in caves, and he had to preach the word. But he got to a point that he was just he was suicidal. He was depressed.
Right.
He was like, God, I'm done. Take my life. I want to die.
Yeah.
And what happened was he ate, he slept, he got up, and then he ate more, and then he slept again.
Yeah.
The Bible says he was better. He was strengthened by that food. So it's a real thing.
Yeah.
His physical exhaustion had created in him just a desire, I can't do this anymore. But of course, the prescription was to get some good food and to rest. And that's physical fatigue. But spiritual fatigue is something that's very, very different in that what we prescribe is different. You don't want to be like, if you haven't slept in 48 hours, it's like, okay, take a nap, miss 1 week, don't be legalistic. If you flew in from the plane and it arrived Saturday morning, whatever, 3 a.m., it's okay, sleep in, it's okay. No one's going to kill you, come back the following week. But spiritual fatigue is different, right?
Right.
It stems from discouragement.
Wow.
Okay, it stems from, you don't want to take a break from God. Let's not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. The answer to spiritual fatigue is not like, oh my gosh, we'll just take a month off of church, take a sabbatical. That's not the answer. It says, let's not give up meeting together.
Yeah.
If I have a bump, and I just say to you guys, my marriage is just on the rocks. Honestly, we're just tired of each other. You wouldn't go, well, maybe just take 2 months and live as single people.
Oh, come on.
And then maybe that rest will make you feel better. That's not a good friend, okay? That's not the advice that I was hoping to get. But this is a real reason why we stop walking with God.
Right.
Well, we get fatigued. So what should we do? What ought we to do? You gotta improve your connection.
Yes.
You gotta improve your connection. I changed since I've been living in just over 4 years in Detroit. We've changed our internet provider a couple times because we're trying to improve our connection, right? When the marriage is going bad, the answer is not take a month break. Actually, the answer is the opposite. It's lean in and improve your connection.
Right.
I got a chance to spend time with an older couple, Kevin and Mariko Quist. Kevin they both recently had their birthday. Kevin recently in February on Valentine's Day turned 62. And one of the things they were sharing about is how when they argue, one of the things they've recently decided to do is just hold hands.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they're just saying it's hard for the blood pressure to escalate when you're holding hands. So they're kind of holding hands and no, I want the spaghetti. No, and they're starting to feel
Sticky
I
rice.
want the spaghetti that much.
Yeah.
But what I admire is that after all these years, they're still trying to improve their connection.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book, or actually, I read a book. I read this last year. It's a book called Sacred Pathways. And one of the things it talks about are the different ways that people connect with God. There are naturalists, those that connect with God outdoors.
Yeah.
The sensates, loving God with the senses. There's traditionalists, those who love God through tradition and ritual. Ascetics, loving God in solitude and simplicity. Activists, those who love God through confrontation. Caregivers, loving God by loving others. Enthusiasts, loving God through celebration. Contemplatives, loving God through adoration. And intellectuals, loving God with the mind. And I typically say the average person has about 3 to 4 ways where they connect with God, right? But one of the reasons that we stop walking with God is we get spiritually fatigued.
Oh, yeah.
We get discouraged. And the answer to that is to improve your connection. Let's read a passage here in 2 Peter. I'm going to put it up here, but before I put it up there, the context of this is the Apostle Peter was also an evangelist and an elder. And he's writing to a church that was under persecution. In fact, at the time that he writes this letter, the emperor was someone named Nero, who was infamous for not just persecuting Christians in the sense of he was like, oh yeah, I don't like those guys. Persecuting by torturing them and killing them. And here's what he writes. He says, His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of Him, who called us by His own glory and goodness. Through these He has given us His very great and precious promises so that through them you can participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. Mm-hmm. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. For if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they'll keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. But whoever does not have them is nearsighted and blind, forgetting that they have been cleansed from their past sins. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, make every effort to confirm your calling and election. For if you do these things, you will never stumble. And you will receive a rich welcome into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. It says twice in the passage that I read, make every effort.
Right.
It has this phrase, and I think it's important, again, to understand the prescription for spiritual fatigue. Again, when I look at my marriage, when I look at times where we're disconnected, when I look at times where we're just tired of the routine, and you look at other marriages that have lasted 30, 40, 50 years, what do they have that makes them last? They're working to improve their connection.
Right.
When you feel spiritual fatigue, often people are like, I just need to take 2 months off. Again, that's good if you're feeling that physical fatigue. Very rarely do people take a month away from their marriage and come back and go, man, the fire for you is it's burning bright now. Usually it's like, wow, I really like being alone. I think we might get a divorce. It's like, that's not a good friend that prescribes that.
Oh, wow.
Improve your connection. What Peter is saying to the church here is, lean into your relationship with God. And you won't feel fatigue. You won't stumble. Make every effort to get close to God. One of the reasons why we stop walking with God is we get tired. So another reason is we lack clarity, right? In the business world, we call this knowing your why. When I stepped out of the ministry for about 3 years, I sold investments. I was an investment broker, sold stocks and bonds. And when you initially start the business, it's a bit of a grind, and it requires a little bit of what I would say intestinal fortitude, because you got to knock doors, you got to meet a lot of strangers, and you got to be rejected quite a bit. My company, we would gather together probably every 2 months, and and it was, that whole industry has what I think a pretty good sort of support system with mentoring and all that. But we would gather together and we would kind of hear stories and motivational talks from the investors or investment brokers that were doing the best, you know what I mean? And in our company, we kind of had people that achieved certain levels, and level 4 was the highest, so everyone started out like myself at level 1, and you'd go, oh my gosh, this guy's level 4, and he's making a lot of money, he was doing well with his business. And I remember one guy, he stood up and he shared, and he just kind of had this scrapbook, and he said, this is my friend, and he just opened it up, and he said, And he kind of opened it up, and inside the scrapbook was like pictures of his family. And it was pictures of the dream home that one day he wanted to own, pictures of a car that he wanted to get. And he'd say, you know, when I'm tired and when I feel like giving up and I'm getting rejected, and after working, you know, a 10-hour day and you make no money, he said I would just look at this scrapbook and it would continue to motivate him. But that was very common. That sort of in the middle of kind of building your business, it was very easy to grow very discouraged, and you kind of started to ask, why am I doing this? You know what I mean? You know, the Genesis account that we're familiar with, God says to Adam and Eve, hey, I'm going to make it really clear. You can have everything. You have this most amazing garden. Just don't eat the fruit of that tree. Right? And I'm sure at the time, I wasn't there, but you know people well enough that I'm sure at the time that the conversation was kind of like this. That he was like, hey, don't eat from that tree. And they were like, oh, seriously, God, just so you know, I'm good. I am so good. I love everything else here. I totally don't honestly, I don't even want that fruit in that tree. They were probably so fired up. They were probably so cool with the parameters. Like, you mean he can do everything? But then they have a conversation with the devil.
Right.
Oh, stop.
And the conversation goes to Genesis 3. It just says, did he really say that?
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing how in those moments, something that was so clear just a few moments ago can seem really vague in that moment. The clarity of our convictions. That's what Paul said. He said, what's more, I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them garbage that I may gain Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. What brought Paul clarity during all the things that he suffered? The persecution, not just from outside, but he even writes in 2 Timothy, he talks about, the disciples. He says, everyone deserted me. And he goes, but I don't hold it against them. He talks about these profoundly alone times. What brought him clarity was Jesus Christ. There's a song by Lady Gaga. The chorus goes, it's called 100 Million. It says, I've got 100 million reasons to walk away. And it says, but baby, I just need one good one to stay. Paul had so many reasons to walk away from God. No one defending him, being stoned and persecuted, but his one reason was knowing Jesus Christ.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
There are lots of reasons for you to stop walking with God. I can give you some if you need some. I'm sure we can all think of them. We could probably just start shouting them. But you just need one reason to have clarity to keep walking, and it's Jesus Christ. It's your love for God. This is Florence Chadwick, an American Olympian and a long-distance runner. She was a long-distance swimmer. She was the first woman to swim the English Channel, the water between France and England. She was the first woman to swim the Strait of Gibraltar. In 1952, she attempted to swim a 26-mile swim. It would have been her longest swim. A 26-mile swim from Catalina Island to the California coastline. Okay? She's flanked by a team of small boats. They watch for sharks and any type of injury emergency. And after 15 hours of swimming, a thick fog set in.
Oh, wow.
She swam for an hour, and then she told her mom, who was part of the boats, that she didn't think she could make it. So she got in, and when she got in and they continued to go to shore, she realized she was less than a mile away.
Oh, wow.
She said she could have made it if she only saw the shoreline.
Oh, wow.
2 months later, she swam it again. The fog set in again, and this time she succeeded, saying that she had a picture of the shoreline in her mind.
Oh, boy.
People stop walking. They stop walking with God because we lack clarity. We lack that vision, right? Without vision, people perish. Without the clarity of why we're doing what we do, people give up, right?
Yes.
And the third reason I believe people stop walking with God is we get derailed.
Ooh.
There's things that happen in life that you just can never anticipate. You can't anticipate it. I can't even tell you what it is because it's gonna be something that you can't anticipate. Sometimes you have a bad interaction at church that you didn't anticipate. If you're with the church long enough, you'll have a bad experience. But that's true with most things, right? If you're a part of your job long enough, you'll have a bad experience. If you're in school long enough, high school or college, you'll have a bad experience. It's just if you're a part of anything, you'll have a bad experience, right? And it can derail you. There's a passage where Jesus talks about how we deal with sin in the church. It's in Matthew chapter 18, and one of the things he said, his wording is, he goes, woe to the things that cause us to sin. He said, and then he says something, and it's very powerful. He says, such things must come.
Yeah.
But woe to the person through whom they come. He says such things. He's saying that the things that make us sin and the things that derail us, in other words, it's part of our journey.
Right.
I don't know the whys of everything. I don't know why God does what he does. I can tell you this, that part of your journey and part of my journey is to learn how to overcome when people sin against me.
Right.
Just like you've sinned against other people.
Yeah.
Just like you've sinned against other people and you desperately need those people to overcome.
Yeah.
You desperately need them to forgive you. You need them to get over it. You need them to move on.
Yeah.
And so part of your journey is to do the same.
Yeah.
Part of your journey. We all get derailed, right? We all have things that just wasn't part of the script. Unfortunately, we're not actually the author of the story of our lives. It's up to God.
Right.
He's the one that introduces the people that you wouldn't have anticipated, and he's the one that allows challenges to happen. Paul writes to the church in Galatia, you are running a good race. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth? Who cut in on you? Who was it? I learned this thing that a lot of times when people say to me, man, I can't stand the church. I can't stand it. I always find out there's one or two names. Really? You hate people? I mean, David Banks is a pretty nice guy. You hate him?
All right, David.
Right? You hate the whole church like you hate Donna Moore like nobody hates Donna Moore.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It's just maybe it's 5 people. Name the 5. Okay, maybe it's 2. All right, it's just Nick Murphy. It's just it's just one person, right? When you say things, oh man, I hate all whatever, Phil. I hate all young. You hate all young people, really? They're pretty awesome. I hate all old people. You hate all. You're going to be one of them. You hate all old people.
Oh man, Lord Jesus.
Really? It usually comes down to a who.
Yeah.
Who did that to you?
Right.
Who made you feel? Who cut in? You say, who did that? You guys were doing it, and someone cut in on you,
Right.
and now you're a different person.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You come and you're miserable and you're negative and you're like you're arm's distance length from everybody, and you let one person do that.
Come on.
You get derailed, right? One story of a person that got derailed that you know really well, of course, is Job, right? This is the artist's rendition of Job. And his life gets derailed in a way that no one could anticipate.
Right.
It's so intense that, again, it's hard to even believe. And Satan wanted to attack this guy, and there's 3 areas that he wanted to attack this man. And this is where I find that Satan tries to attack us. And to get us to stop walking with God. He attacked his wealth, he attacked his health, and he attacked his family.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
He said, I'm going to use these 3 things to get you to curse God. I'm going to use money, I'm going to use your health, and I'm going to use your family to get you to curse God. But there's a lot of stories that Job teaches. A lot of theologians actually consider it, sort of lump it with the wisdom literature of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. But one of the stories of Job, quite frankly, is just that, yeah, Satan can attack those things, but he cannot take your friends away. And in these times of extreme derailment, sometimes you find out the friendships that you've built over the years. You know, Greek philosopher Aristotle said there's three kinds of friends that people build in life, right? There's the utility friends that are based on usefulness. It's kind of transactional, you know. Hey, you help me with this, I'll do that. Hey, being friends with your mechanic, you know, friends with a classmate. You know, just there's sort of a convenience that's sort of built into the relationship that's happenstance. They're the friends that you build through mutual fun and enjoyment. Hey, we both like football, we watch the games together. Sometimes boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, just like, hey, we just enjoy being together. But then he said there's one friendship that stands above them all, and those are the friendships that train in virtue. The friendships that they're not based on what you can get, but you're both trying to be the best that you can be. This is just a Greek philosopher making this observation. You know, the best friends are the friends that are trying to help each other walk with God.
Amen.
Yeah, that's what we're talking
And
about.
that when we get derailed, here's what's going to get exposed. And I say when because it's part of your journey, and it's part of my journey. When we get derailed, what's exposed is who's sitting beside us during that time.
Right.
Who's sitting beside us. Those types of friendships don't happen in a moment. They're friendships that's built. They're friendships that are deliberate. They're not going to be built because you have the same interest in football. They're not going to be built just because you work together. It's not going to be built because you look alike, or you're the same age demographic, or you're the same race. It's going to be built because you're training in virtue, that you are trying to help each other walk with God. We're going to have a baptism, but before we have that, I'm going to close off by reading a passage in Isaiah chapter 40, and I'm just going to read it to have us listen, because I want us to consider there are three reasons we stop walking with God. You get tired, you lack clarity, and you get derailed. But this talks about how God is the remedy for those. It says, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary. He increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men, they stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." How are we going to walk persistently? We got to lean into God. We've got a young lady that's chosen to lean into God. She's going to get baptized here, so we're going to turn it over to them.